In this video we're going to be looking at the question, what was the cause of World War One? Learning intention is to evaluate the causes of World War One. Success criteria for the lesson is to explain a single argument, to explain multiple arguments, and to evaluate the arguments. Just a quick recap before we go on to the main part of the lesson. Here I've got 3 tasks that I would like you to complete. Number 1, we have got 3 long-term causes with 3 definitions. I want you to match them up, please. Question 2, match the individual, so the person, with the correct appositive. So remember, a positive is something that adds extra description about it. And finally, the correct end to the sentence. So we've got 3 things to link up this time. You can either draw some arrows to match up, or you can rearrange the text to put all of the right ones in the same line. Finally, task 3, spot the mistakes. I have written a brief paragraph about alliances below. There are some mistakes in there that I would like you to underline. Extra challenge, if you can, in different colour, write the correct answer next to it, or what should be there instead. Pause the video here in order to complete that task, and then press play when you're ready to move on. So, today you're going to be answering the question, what was the cause of World War One? Now, this is your success criteria, which is also up on Microsoft Teams. This is in the rubric section. So, there's lots of different things that I'll be assessing your answer to that question on today. First one is causation, which is one of our historical skills. So, developing will be to show one cause, meeting to include multiple causes, and exceeding to link the causes together. Historical detail, developing is to include some key details, meeting to include good use of key details, and exceeding frequent use of key details. So key details being things like dates, countries, and names. Historical facts. Argument, developing, you're going to need to be describing your argument when you're putting it forward in your paragraphs. Meeting, you need to add explanation to those arguments. And then exceeding, you are going to need to back up your argument with some sort of evidence, so proof, you're proving it. Structure-wise, developing, you need to be able to write in full sentences and paragraphs, please, as standard. Meeting, to include a conclusion at the end of your argument, and exceeding, to include an introduction to your argument. Finally, we've got SPAG, developing to correctly spell keywords, so things like militarism and nationalism, alliances, country names, all these words we've been using frequently should be spelled correctly. Meeting, to use a variety of sentence starters, so not just one cause is. We're using different sentence starters to make your answer more interesting to read. And then finally, exceeding, to use a wide variety of sentence starters and conjunctions to make your work flow and be cohesive. So, today I'm just going to go through a couple of these points on the success criteria and then let you get on with answering that key question, what was the cause of World War One? Obviously, because we're only answering one question and you've got a lot of criteria to hit, I expect depth. So regardless of whether you're aiming for developing, meeting, or exceeding, I expect depth in your answers. So, causation. These are some of the things you could include within your answer. So we had the short-term cause being the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. We've got the long-term causes we've looked at in the past, which were alliances, militarism, nationalism, and imperialism. And then last week we also included the Schlieffen Plan, which you can also include within your answer. So you can talk about some of those causes. Obviously, you pick the ones that you feel that you would be able to write the most and most quality writing on. Next, historical detail. So these are some ideas that you can use within your answers. So some of the names we've looked at are Franz Ferdinand, Gavrilo Princip, and General von Schlieffen. Dates that you could include are things like the assassination, when that happened, the Battle of Liège, the different ultimatums, and the different declarations of war. So those are good examples of where you can include dates. And then specific countries and alliances. We've got the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, Triple Entente of Britain, France, and Russia, and then other important countries that we've mentioned throughout being Serbia, Bosnia, and Belgium. So there's plenty of examples of what you can include in your historical details there. It's up to you on how you go about using those. So in front of you, you should have an example of one argument. So this is one paragraph for one cause. I've gone with militarism here. This is my example of a solid paragraph. In green, I've highlighted the description part of the paragraph, so it can be argued that militarism could be seen as the cause of World War I. So I'm saying what my point is. Militarism is where countries are concentrating on building up their armed force capabilities. This could be through developing better weaponry or expanding numbers. So that is my description. So I've said the cause is militarism and then described what that is. That would be in a developing section. The next bit in blue is my explanation. So this could have been the cause of World War I, as when countries start to develop stronger military, it causes other countries to become more fearful and develop their own. So I'm giving indication on how hypothetically that cause could lead to war. So I'm not saying how it did, I'm just giving an explanation on that cause. That would be a meeting addition. And then finally, we're getting into my evidence, where I'm linking it into something that actually happened. So an example of this is that Germany was involved in a naval race with Great Britain. Both countries were in an intense rivalry to build the largest and most powerful navy on the seas. This led to great distrust between the countries, and therefore it can be argued the war between the two was inevitable. So I have then used evidence from what we've been learning and weave that into my answer to back up my explanation. So I'm giving a real life example. Okay, so that would be an example of a solid paragraph. Obviously, I would expect you to include more things in there. You can show off a little bit more than I have. Structure-wise, to get meeting, you need to include a conclusion, and for exceeding, an introduction. So a conclusion, you're summing up your overall argument. So this isn't going to be introducing new information. So you're not going to talk about something new. You're evaluating the arguments you've made so far in your answer and then deciding on your overall result. So out of the ones that you've been discussing in your answer, which one do you think is the main cause and why? Okay, so it's not new information. And introduction. Introduction is where you're going to introduce what the question is. So what are you actually answering? You can also include lots of background information in here that's not necessarily answering the question, but gives you extra depth and background to the scenario. It's where you can show off, basically. Show off what you know. I'll give you an example right now. So an example of an introduction might be, on the 30th of July 1914, Austria-Hungary bombed the Serbian capital of Belgrade, the first of many violent actions which would result in the death of millions. In this essay, I am going to be exploring how the whole situation came about. I will do this by investigating the arguments surrounding both the short and long-term causes which could have caused the outbreak of World War I before concluding with my overall opinion. So I'm setting out some background, I've set the scene, and telling the reader what I am going to be doing and how I'm going to do it. And that is a nice, simple, straightforward introduction. Finally, I've included here some sentence starters for you. I've got some first point ones, so when you're first introducing an idea, some explanation and evidence sentence starters. If you need to add to a point, you've got those sentence starters. If you're about to make a different point, you can use one of those three. And you've got some conclusion language there too. You're welcome to use those ones or any of your own. This is just there to help you. That is your task for today. Make sure you are using all of your success criteria. Make sure you're looking at it closely on what you need to include. Use my evidence, use my examples, use all of the information that I've given you here in order to help you. Make sure that you are including lots of depth in here. You are only answering this one question, so I expect you to have lots of depth and detail within your answer. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading your responses.